We need to talk about Derek Chisora because few fighters have given us more drama, heart and honest effort. He stood up to Vitaly Klitschko. Yes, he lost, but he proved that he belonged. And he went to war with Tyson Fury the first time. And yes, in the rematch, Fury solved the puzzle, but Derek still came back. Against Carlos Takam, Derek was the underdog. He stayed in the trenches, then landed a huge right, and the fight was over. David Price tried to restart his career. Chisora walked him down with pure pressure and pure power. And then of course there was the Usyk fight, who is a master technician. Derek switched stances, jab to the body, and made it very, very tough. A closer fight than people remember. And then Joe Joyce picked Derek to bounce back, which proved to be a bad idea because Derek Chisora set traps on the ropes and took control. And then we had the Dillian White fights, which were two wild fights. And in the trilogy, Derek must avoid that left hook. But what we know about Derek is that he knows how to take a punch. This is more than a record. It's a story of resilience. So let's give him his flowers and ask the real question. Where does this journey end? Now, Derek is loved by the public. He is really loved by the British public, to be specific. But where do we go from here? Or where does he go from here? What is the final destination of Derek Chisora? Or is this simply just a process? Whatever it is, it's been a journey. Now, I remember when Derek fought Vitaly Klitschko. It was a brave performance against a dominant champion. And Derek lost the fight. He did lose the fight, but he did show bravery. Now, sometimes in life we get victories from our losses. In that fight, Derek showed that he belonged at that level and that he could compete with the best. This reminded us that heart and resilience can narrow the gap against even the most imposing odds. Fans still look back at that night as proof that character can shine really, really bright. What did that brave attempt reveal about Derek Chisora? Well, it revealed his toughness and it revealed his hunger and the respect that he earned. The first Tyson Fury fight was incredible. My recollection was that it was like pure cinema. Back and forth exchanges, blood, guts and glory. However, the rematch was a complete shutout. Because in that fight, Derek could not solve the puzzle. In fairness, not many people have been able to solve that puzzle. Because Tyson Fury, most consider to be a great fighter. And he knew exactly what to do. When Derek fought Takam, I believe he was the underdog. Takam at that time was considered very, very dangerous. Takam was like really muscular and he had vicious hooks and a vicious pace. This fight seemed like a bad matchup for Derek. But Derek stood in the trenches. He stood in the trenches and he took some heavy, heavy punches. But in round 8, he used the jab to set up a thunderous right hook. And that was all she wrote. It was a beautiful punch and a truly beautiful moment. Now remember when David Price was supposed to be the next best thing? I remember when he absolutely destroyed Audley Harrison. But then he met Tony Thompson. And let's be honest, that was some really, really bad matchmaking. And when David Price fought Derek Chisora, it was like an opportunity to be reborn. Now I like David Price, but let's be honest, Derek Chisora took his soul. Because Derek was absolutely ferocious. David could not stop the intensity, He could not stop the power. Derek just got in range and he just let his hands go. No hesitation, just pure passion and pure commitment. When Derek fought Usyk, we knew that Usyk was a great cruiserweight champion. We knew that. But at the time, we did not know that he was a great heavyweight champion. And Derek not only came with intention, he actually came with some quite slick moves. At times in the fight, Derek would turn southpaw and land the right jab to the body. Usyk was probably offended by the audacity of such a move, but in truth, here's the following. This was one of the hardest puzzles that Usyk had to solve. And I actually thought the fight was relatively close because Derek, he gave everything. He showed passion, he showed commitment, but he also showed an understanding of the science of boxing. Usyk was probably more shocked than anyone else. In this fight, Derek was the old dog, but he was the old dog that learnt new tricks. It was a great performance, and I feel that the British public did not give that performance the respect it deserved. So Joe Joyce chose Derek Chisora to rebound his career. This turned out to be a really, really bad idea. At one point, Joe Joyce was really feared, but since experiencing the stoppages to Zhang, everything has changed. Derek came to fight, and Joe Joyce came to fight because that's what they do. It was a competitive fight, but Derek eventually came through. It was a very bruising affair. Derek spent time on the ropes, using traps, and creating a minimal target. And I just re-watched some of the Wallin fight the other day, and Derek just bullied him and absolutely dominated him. So going back to Joe Joyce, this was another courageous performance. And Derek Chisora, he knows his boxing identity. If you fall into his traps, he will execute. And execute he did. This was another great night at the office. And of course we have the Dillian Whyte situation. 2 fights and a potential 3rd fight on the way. I really liked Derek's performance in the 2nd fight. I really did. He was in great shape and should have been ahead on the scorecards until he got hit with that great left hook. But if Derek can avoid that left hook counter, he has a great chance in the trilogy. He needs to be a bit more strategic. He needs to feint to draw that left hook out and then attack. And assuming that the trilogy does happen, I think this would be a great fight and potentially could be a great end to his career. And it would be the rare opportunity where someone goes out on their terms as opposed to being forced out. And that's assuming that Derek retires after the fight, because he may want to carry on dependent of the result. But to me, it's a mouth-watering trilogy. To me, Derek has been a consistent warrior. He has been a consistent warrior. You could argue that every boxer is a warrior. And why is that? Every boxer is a warrior because they step into the ring. They step into what Teddy Atlas calls the chamber of truth. But not every warrior is built the same. And for this reason, Derek Chisora is like a machine. In a sense, he reminds me a bit like Rocky Marciano in regards to his mentality. Rocky Marciano, for those that know, would love to fight. This is why Rocky would only throw 5 jabs per round and all the other punches were just power punches. And similar, Derek Chisora, he just loves the battle. He loves the fight. He loves the war. So if all boxers are warriors, then not all warriors are equal. Derek was not a world champion. However, he did have a champion heart. And I think that's why he's loved by so many people. White versus Chisora, the career-defining final chapter. Two warriors, two classics, and now the trilogy. Dillian White, tested by Anthony Joshua and also tested by Joseph Parker, must answer the big one. Can he reload that left hook that iced Lucas Brown and flip the rematch against Derek Chisora? Or did the Moses Atama night take a toll? And across the ring, a reborn Derek Chisora rides momentum, bullying Wallin and stunning Joe Joyce. This sells because it's real. Pride, pressure, and pay-per-view stakes. When these two collide, technique bends to heart. Expect fire, expect chaos, expect war. So apparently, Dillian White and Derek Chisora are going to have a trilogy. And they have already had two great fights. They have been proud, proud warriors. And they've put it all on the line. And I'm excited because I think this would be a tremendous fight and a good way for both men to go out on. Let's start with Dillian White. He has had a very, very respectable career. I mean, he fought Anthony Joshua, Joseph Parker, Lucas Brown, Tyson Fury, and much, much more. He is seasoned and he has a credible background. His last fight against Moses Atama was unfortunate. It was very unfortunate. But let's remember, everyone can have a bad day at the office. Derek Chisora has been on a bit of a high. He beat Joe Joyce, which was very, very surprising. His head movement and his left hooks and right hooks, they were impressive. And that right hand counter knockdown in round 10, that wasn't bad either. And he really bullied Otto Wallin. He really did. I mean, Otto Wallin seemed to have left his reflexes in the Tyson Fury fight, respectively. But the point is that Derek Chisora is a tough man. So in the two fights, we have 2 wins for Dillian White. But now we have Derek Chisora with momentum. Now in the rematch, I thought Derek was winning before he walked onto that vicious left hook. I believe it was in round 11 or round 10. Let's be honest, Dillian White has a vicious left hook, or he had a vicious left hook. Just ask Anthony Joshua and Lucas Brown. But then the question remains, does he still have a vicious left hook? Against Moses Atama, it looked like he couldn't even throw the left hook. And for me, for Dillian White to be successful in this fight, he needs to rediscover that left hook. He also needs to forget about the skeleton of the Moses Atama fight. Now, there are different versions of Dillian White. There are different versions. So there's the version with Jonathan Banks, then there's the version with Mark Tibbs, and then there's the version with Buddy McGirt. These are all respectable trainers. They're all respectable trainers on a high level. Personally, and I'm probably in the minority here, I like the version with Jonathan Banks. That version of Dillian White was lighter. He used movement, he used a double jab. And if you got in close, he had that counter left hook. The version of White that has not been impressive, and that's been an understatement, is the version that fought, I believe it was Tete. And yeah, that was not an impressive version. But then we had the version of the Mark Tibbs, and again, he had some really good wins. Joseph Parker was one win that stood out, and then he had the win against Lucas Brown. So Dillian White needs to rediscover his previous form, and he needs to rediscover it very quickly. Now, Derek's long-term trainer was Don Charles. This is the same Don Charles that was the former trainer of Daniel Dubois, and he did a great job with Daniel Dubois. He also was trained by Buddy McGirt, I believe, in the first Joseph Parker fight. I now believe he is trained by Alex, I believe, and he's had some good results with Alex. Now, Derek seems to change his trainers a lot, but there seems to be some continuity here with Alex. I believe recently Derek Chisora comes into fights in good fighting shape, and that is a reflection on the good performances. And I believe for this fight, Derek will come into this fight not only in great shape, but with great passion and great determination. I think this is a really good fight, and I think the public will get behind it, because I think the public, they like both fighters. I think people understand that as a collective, this is a good fight. So of course people were very disappointed. The boxing community were very disappointed with the Moses Atama situation. But I think people in general, particularly the boxing community, understand that this is a different context. And for that reason, I think this fight has the potential to make good money. It will generate attention, and it will probably do decent pay-per-view numbers. And the marketing and the awareness, it does need to be on point. And both these fighters are good at marketing fights because they're unpredictable and they can be very aggressive. So there's the potential of a really great fight. And let's remember, Dillian Whyte is a warrior. Derek Chisora is a warrior. And when two warriors get together, typically you get a war. And that's what the public want. They want passion, they want fire. And these two warriors, they can bring the right elements. And after all, they are great dancing partners. There are so many questions here. Can Dillian Whyte regain his previous form? Is Dillian Whyte still carrying an injury? Because I believe he did carry an injury in the Moses Atama fight. Can Dillian Whyte complete a camp without an injury? And does Dillian Whyte still have that world-class left hook? And when it comes to Derek Chisora, what does he have left? Does he still have a special performance? Can he bring the same intensity that he brought to the Joe Joyce fight? And how will he deal with Dillian Whyte's left hook? Can he deal with Dillian Whyte's counters? But all in all, if this fight is made, I think it will be a great build-up, or it potentially could be a great build-up. But more importantly, it could be a great, great fight.